Welcome to the Book District Podcast, Ideas That Make an Impact. I'm your host, Jeremy Jones. Now come to our community and join us with aspiring authors and entrepreneurs at www.thebookdistrict.com. Now, let's get to today's show. Hey, welcome back. This is Jeremy Jones with the Book District Podcast, Ideas That Make an Impact. And today we're joined with a very special guest, Sebastien Richard. Hey, Sebastien, how you doing?
Hi, Jeremy. Doing great.
Awesome. So we're here with Sebastien, talking with him about his new book, Lead Like a Superhero, What Pop Culture Icons Can Teach Us About Impactful Leadership. Now, Sebastien, just so everyone can get to know you a little bit, would you mind sharing a little bit about your background and how you got to what you're doing today?
Sure. Before I do that, I just wanted to thank you for this wonderful opportunity to be on your show. I appreciate that very much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you.
All right. As for my background, well, my name is Sebastien Richard. I was born in Montreal, Quebec, Canada. And 4 years ago, my wife and my whole family, we moved to Prince Edward Island, which is for your listeners who might not know, a small island on the tip of eastern Canada. It's also Canada's smallest province. And it's the home of Anne of Green Gables. And we moved there, my whole family and I. We were seeking a quieter lifestyle. And we had a plan also for to better our family life financially because the houses weren't as expensive over there. And so we were looking to downsize financially. And, we got hit, I guess, sideways by a few things here and there. And we were pushed. My wife and I, we call this experiment the God's Boot Camp experiment. Sometimes God will lead you in a place where you don't necessarily expect certain changes to occur, or even though you know it's going to be a change, there's certain things that you don't see coming. And that's what it was for us. The island is a very long learning curve for us, and it forced us to reinvent ourselves. And what am I about? Basically, I started a business a couple of years ago. I am now a John Maxwell certified coach and speaker with the John Maxwell team. And I am also the founder of thrivingonpurpose.com, which is my coaching and leadership training company. And I'm the author of Lead Like a Superhero as well, which will be out on May 16th. So all this didn't come about fast. It was a slow process, a slow crockpot simmering process. And it came about through being squeezed out of my comfort zone. So, and it happened. There were a lot of things that happened that made me actually decide to launch my own business, to quit my, I didn't quit the job yet. I'm still in transition, but I'm now part-time at my day job, and I'm transitioning towards full-time with my business.
Very good. And that's with being...
Yeah, it's been a transition. There's a lot of...
Yep. And that will be with being a consultant with being a John Maxwell consultant. Is that correct?
I'm more of a coach than a consultant. And a speaker. So keynote and such. Consultant, not as much, more like a trainer. So what I do is I present leadership masterminds and seminars to companies.
Right. Yep. Very good. And so tell me how the specific idea of this book, Lead Like a Superhero, came about for you.
Yeah, well, I think your folks, the people who listen to your podcast are pretty much aware that when, for example, if you go and buy a green Buick, a brand new green Buick, the excitement of the whole thing will make you all of a sudden spot all the green Buicks in your neighborhood. You go out in the street and you're going to see all green Buicks, and you're going to be like, man, I thought I was the only one with a green Buick. And all of a sudden, all you start seeing is green Buicks. Well, leadership training was pretty much the same process for me. Although I had been in personal growth since I was 18 years old, it was mostly spiritual growth through Christian books and Christian teachings and stuff. And also some intellectual growth, because I have a varied interest in many different disciplines and books. So leadership training came a little later, so a couple of years ago, and I was deep into it, because when I dive into something, I dive deep. So I was in leadership. I was listening to podcasts and trainings and all kinds of video courses on leadership. So I was pretty much saturating my brain with leadership, and I began seeing it everywhere. And the idea just popped into my mind because I'm a superhero fan. I'm a big comic book geek. And the idea popped into my mind that, hey, wait a minute, Superman is a really good leader. Mm-hmm. And as I started considering my favorite superheroes one after the other, obviously I looked at Captain America, I considered Batman, and I even went down the road of Wolverine. And I started writing down, and all this, what I'm saying, happened in about 5 minutes. So I started jotting down all the names of my favorite superheroes. And next to their names, I jotted down how they lead, because I noticed that they all had leadership capacity and capabilities and abilities, but they all brought something different to the table. Obviously, Wolverine is not the same leader or as refined as Captain America, right? Mm-hmm. So I started writing how they lead next to each one. And when I was all done, I had 10 superhero names who were great leaders in their own right. And I had right next to their names how they led. And I got pretty psyched. Right away, I knew I had a big idea. You know when you have a big idea and it hits you, you become really enthusiastic. Mm-hmm. So I grabbed the phone, and I called my wife, and I said, honey, guess what? I got a great idea, and I think it's going to make for a book. And I've always wanted to write a book. I wrote a book earlier in my 20s that never got published. I wrote it in French, and then later I wrote a short Kindle book. But this was a bigger idea, I thought, and my wife actually encouraged me to get it published by a real publisher this time, because I was considering in the beginning going with Kindle, and she said, no. While I was writing it, she said, no. She says, this is a really big idea, and it can really, really touch young men and women and impact them in a way that's going to really guide them in their leadership. So you need to get that book published. So I went ahead and I got lucky with Morgan James.
Oh, that's fantastic. Awesome. So let's go into each of the 3 big ideas here, and we've touched on it a little bit, but let's go into it on some practical tips for some of the listeners here. And the first one is that superheroes, although fictional, demonstrate amazing leadership qualities. So let's use maybe one specific example, maybe one of your favorites, or one that really applies to people in a leadership role or wanting to be in a leadership role. Tell us how you discovered that maybe one specific superhero demonstrates leadership abilities and what we can draw from that.
All right. Well, for this question, I guess I'll go with the most popular one, or one of the most popular ones, which is Superman. Mm-hmm. When we're a kid, most of us really, really love Superman. When we get older, all of a sudden we get really interested in Batman because we find he's more relevant. But as children, I guess our first love in the superhero genre is either Superman or Spider-Man. So just for this example, I'm going to go with Superman. In the book, I call Superman the leader who forges ahead like a locomotive. That's how Superman leads. He leads from the front and at full throttle. Mm-hmm. And as I explained in the book, why he leads this way is because he's so capable. Superman has a power level that is above and beyond all the other superheroes. He's superpowered in a way that most of the others are not. So he's got super strength, super speed, vision powers, and the rest. Then another superhero, like we could take as an example, like Batman, who doesn't have any superpowers, so who's much more limited in time and space. So as that's the template I use for Superman. I basically took the example because at the end of each chapter, there's a call to action. So basically, it's an example that we take from the superhero to say, hey, guys, here's what you should do to lead more like Superman, or what example can we take from Superman to be more like him? And the call to action in the Superman chapter is how you can become a super achiever instead of an overachiever. And in that part of the chapter, I actually demystify the thought or the concept that people can multitask. Mm-hmm. Yep. So basically, I identify this from a scientific point of view that multitasking is a myth. Yep. And I show how you can do one thing at a time and crush it, and then go to the next one and crush that one, and on and on and on, and achieve a lot more and become a super achiever instead of trying to multitask many things at once and botch all of them.
Yep.
So that's the example I take from Superman. And basically, I also take the opposite. I say, look, we're not Superman. So because we're not, because we don't have those powers, we cannot even hope to multitask in a way that's remotely possible. So that's an example of a chapter in the book.
Yep.
I go down the list. There's 12 superheroes that I use. So that's one that came to me when you asked me that question.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, and that's a great example to see how we can apply something specific to multitasking. You know, I got that. It's a big deal for people that they think they can do multiple things at the same time, and it totally diffuses productivity on all of those different things. So I think that's such a great point. Let's go into the second one here, and that is you define that there are two types of leadership lanes. Would you mind sharing what each of those are, and then how you've seen that be able to apply for people in their leadership position?
Yeah, well, in my experience, I've noticed that when people become really, really interested in getting leadership training, people come at it from two different angles. The first one is, and I would gather it's probably the most popular one, is they come at it from a position where they have been in touch with leadership directly or indirectly, and they have seen the benefit of it. So either their parents were entrepreneurs, or they grew up surrounded by leaders, or they were in touch with it in some form or another. So they see the value in it, and they just want that for themselves. Okay, so that's one lane. The other lane is you come to it from a position of want or of lack. I once heard a pastor, and he said this. He said, "It is not what we have that makes us better, but what we lack and what we can gain through trying to fill that lack. If we go at it from a good approach, if we try to fill that gap, then what we attain through it is more stable and durable than if we were given it on a silver platter." So basically, it's coming at it from a position of want, which is where I came from. I grew up with a severe leadership lack. My father was not a good role model. He was not evil. He was not mean. He was not someone who beat us, but he was just an irresponsible man. So I didn't have any male role model that was there going ahead, forging ahead and giving me footsteps in which to walk. So what happened is later in life, I started looking for that. And since I was already a Christian, fortunately, I started looking for it in good role models, good and godly men that were in my local church. And I started to really, really thirst and hunger for leadership. So that's the other lane through which that I found a lot of people get hooked on leadership training, knowing more about leadership or bettering their own leadership skills. It's coming at it from a position of want.
Yeah, that's such a good point. And this is an area that flows into all areas of our life, you know, like managing money. I've got some friends that are very well off and very wealthy, and some of them just give their children things, and some of them don't. They allow them to go through that pain and struggle of, you know, working and earning it. And it makes a huge difference. And from the outside, it may seem, you know, or from the child's point of view, it's like, oh, you have it, why don't you give it to me? But they don't learn anything in that process. And I'm sure it's this, you know, it's the same process with a leadership example, is that we can look to other examples or maybe say, I didn't have this leader in my life, so I want to be this type of leader. So yeah, great examples. Yeah, very good. So let's go to the third big idea here, and that is people who buy comic books are consciously or not seeking to be empowered. Tell us about that.
Yeah, well, I've noticed that obviously when you're writing a book and your template is superheroes, you do some background research. You want to know who your audience is going to be and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And as a comic book fan myself growing up, like I said earlier, I didn't have that leadership. And lo and behold, I was drawn to comic book characters. Why? Well, because Superman, Batman, Captain America, these guys, when you read their stories, it's empowering. I mean, you feel empowered when you see them on the big screen acting out and saving the world and self-sacrificing and being noble and wanting to help other people, their fellow man. That's empowering. I remember coming out of the movie theater after I saw a Superman or Batman movie when I was younger, and I felt empowered. I wanted to be that. So, and I've noticed also in high school while I was growing up that the jocks, the popular guys, the muscular guys who had all the girls and who were captain of the football team or hockey team, in my case in Canada, these guys, they don't read comic books very much. But the outcasts or the guys who don't have self-confidence or who grow up in a single-parent home, they flock to comic books a lot more. So I noticed that trend there. So what they're basically looking for is to feel empowered. Because they're not. There's something lacking in their life, and comic book characters kind of fill that void to some degree, right? Mm-hmm. So I noticed that, and I think that that's a huge pain point that the book does address in the form of being entertaining, but also in teaching these men who might already be in business, who might already be successful. It's still going to be a fascinating read because it's, let's face it, a lot of us just enjoy superheroes.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, very good. Well, thank you so much for taking a few minutes to share these ideas. What a great angle that you've put on leadership for us to, connect with superheroes. So we kind of view as leadership, qualities and leaders and people that we look to, and then there are these fictional characters. And so, congratulations on your book. Go ahead and share with the listeners, where can people connect with you and also find your book?
Sure. That's great. Well, you can find my book first off. You can find it on Amazon for sure. It's going to be available on May 16th on all the platforms that you're interested in. If you prefer buying a book on Books A Million or all the other bookstores online, it's going to be there as well. It's going to be in digital. It's going to be in paperback. There's even some hardcover copies available. And you can friend me on Facebook. You can find me at author Sebastien Richard. But here's the kicker. It's not S-T-I-A-N. It's S-T-I-E-N. Sebastian, S-T-I-E-N, Richard, R-I-C-H-R-D.
All right.
So you can find me on Facebook. You can find me on my website, which is thrivingonpurpose.com. And I also have a Facebook group for both for Lead Like a Superhero. So you just go to Facebook/groups/Lead Like a Superhero, and you can ask to be added to the group because I'm creating some content there as well. I'm giving away 2 sample chapters for the book there, and I'm working on, hopefully I'll be able to put it there, a secret chapter that I'm going to add, especially for the members of that Facebook group.
Excellent. Very good. Well, thanks again for taking the time to do this. I appreciate it. And what we'll do is, for all the listeners, you can go to thebookdistrict.com to connect with our community. And in there, you can connect with all of the show notes. We'll link up all of the resources that we mentioned here in the show notes. And recommend everyone go out and check out Sebastian's new book, Lead Like a Superhero. Thank you, Sebastian. Appreciate it, man. Have a great day. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeremy. Loved it.
You're welcome. All right, for all the listeners, we will see you next time. Thanks. Bye for now.